let me share. So we're going to sum up today. We're going to sum up this book, and there's a few things I want to share, and then I really want to hear from you. I want to hear, okay, so how have things changed for you? Today we're going to talk about the dictionary of emotions. So that piece in the back where there's a table. Got to run through these, right? We're recording. We're going to share these just so everybody's aware. No transcription devices. If you would, share your comments rather than put them in the chat so we can all hear them because we all want to gain from your wisdom. Hi, Brenda.
Hello.
So here's where I'd like to start. I'd like to just share with you a little bit about what this is and where it came from. So many of you know I'm a former project manager. So when I started trying to make sense of emotions, what was the logical thing to do? A spreadsheet, right? Create a spreadsheet because that's what project managers do. So I started creating a spreadsheet. So I created a column for the emotion, and then I already was working with story, impulse, purpose, and so started populating those. And as I built this, I realized, wow, there are a lot of emotions. And the people I shared it with, many times coachees or coaches, uh, kept saying, wow, well, you should write a dictionary of emotions. And I'm like, I don't know. Sounds kind of dry, not really that interesting. But I kept it because for me, it was very helpful as a way to organize information. And I could put it in alphabetical order and I could create the columns I wanted, the categories. And so what I ended up with is what you see here. So one of the things that I do always, and it's not just with emotions, anytime I hear a word or that I'm not really familiar with or I'm a little uncertain about, I always go look up the etymology or the root. Like linguistically, where did this word come from? That for me has always been of interest. And what I found is that it's amazing when you do that with emotions. It's amazing how often the root tells you something, enriches the interpretation, helps at least me understand better. So, for instance, under tenderness, well, it comes from Latin. Oh, well, there's an interesting point right there. We know where it originated, and when it was created in Latin, it meant soft or delicate, tender, youthful. So when I think about tenderness, that informs the way it feels for me, how I notice it in other people. And more as I was doing this, I realized that, wow, this is fantastic. What a resource. So I do that with all kinds of words. Like, I don't think responsibility is necessarily an emotion, but it's great to go look up the etymology. Like, where did this word come from? What were people trying to create a word to describe when they created that word? So for me, the etymology is one of the most interesting things about any word, but any emotion for sure. And then from talking with me and the reading, there's a story, there's this narrative. And so how concisely could I create a narrative that would be consistent with the emotion? One of the things I've tried really hard to do is, you see under tenderness, it uses the word here tender. And what I've tried really hard to do when I write, for instance, a story is not use an emotion to describe an emotion. And the reason for that is I found that I started getting circular references. Because if I use the word tenderness, if I use kind here, then I'd have to go look up kindness. And then in kindness, it would be something like, um, there'd be another word related to, and then I have to go look up that. And I thought, there's got to be a better way. So sometimes it's quite challenging, I find, to articulate the narrative of an emotion without using other emotions. But I try really hard to do that because for me, it produces clarity. Here I put predisposition, which is like our impulse. What do we feel like doing, whether we do it or not? And I try it again to be as articulate as I can. Human concern, whoops, for me, that would be purpose. Like, why do we have this emotion? And then I thought, well, it'd be helpful to know associated emotions. So either emotions that are similar that we confuse with this emotion or we collapse, let's say, with this emotion, or emotions that are maybe opposites in a way. Um, so anything associated with it that would help me, again, be clear about that emotion. So this is where it came from. This is how it happened. It's all the result of me being a project manager for 15 years, and that's just the way I saw stuff. And then this became the field guide to emotions too, because Curtis Watkins, who was highly trained and very experienced as a somatic coach, he and I took this. We weeded down the number from 250 to only 159, as Peter Rendina will verify. And so we weeded it down because, well, if we were going to do a spread on each emotion, 150 emotions would be a 300-page book already. And we thought nobody's going to buy a 600-page book on emotions. Nobody. Sorry. I don't care how interested they are in emotions. So we got down to 150. We thought, oh, that's a nice number. But then we added in all the somatic components that Curtis knew and that he brought. And then we added some other things. We added quotes and we added other things. But the basis of it was this. We started with this. We weeded out some, we added a few in, and that ended up being the field guide to emotions. So let me just stop there and ask. So any questions about this or where it comes from or how I use it or anything? Anything occur to you that you go, one thing I'd like to know about this is,
I just want to say that I love, like you, I love the etymology part of it. I'm like a word groupie. Like I would buy a 600-page book about, about words. I
yeah.
um yeah, no, the etym and it's interesting because I have that inclination. What I remember from the etymology helps ground me in thinking about and noticing the characteristics of the emotion.
Hmm.
So it's
Yeah.
really a handy doorway in for me.
Yeah. Lovely. Well, I'm happy to know we would have sold one copy of the field guide if we had written 600 pages. That's good to know. It's a relief. So thank you, Marie. But yeah, I
Oh yeah.
agree. I agree with you completely. These help me be clear about, well, what is this emotion? What does it feel like? What does it look like? And sometimes I just think they're fascinating. And I'll talk more about those in a second, but I think there's a world just in the etymology of these. And for me, it's completely fascinating. I don't go look them up because I have to. I go look them up because I want to. I want to see what's there. Brenda, did you have your hand up? No? Yes? No? Yasmin?
Sorry.
Oh, Brenda,
Yeah,
Brenda.
sorry,
Okay,
I
Brenda.
had
Yeah.
someone at the door.
Oh,
Yeah, I was just curious, how did you go about determining which emotions to take out?
oh, for the field guide?
Yeah.
Well, we took out emotions that we thought, well, these are not going to be as useful as other emotions. Some of them, you know what happens when you start collaborating? Sometimes
Mm.
people say, I don't agree with you. It's hard to hear, but sometimes they do that. And Curtis said, like, in here, if you look it up, it says loneliness. But I also put in here lonesome, which is the way I thought differently about it then. And Curtis said, I don't think so. I don't think that's an emotion. I don't think we can put that in the field guide. And actually, that was really good because it got me thinking about, well, what is when you're alone, but it's all okay? Oh, maybe it's solitude. So what it helped me do was get clear about certain emotions. But mainly they were taken out because either we decided not really an emotion, not as valuable as the other ones. But I have to tell you, it's a hard process because then what we did is we took the field guide and then we whittled it down to 67
Mm.
for the original Emoli cards and then with Marcel for the Amori cards. And that's painful because you have to discard some emotions that you're kind of attached to and that you think that's a really important emotion for people to know. But again, you can't have 150 cards in a deck of cards. It just won't, it's not manageable. So there wasn't like a rule about it, but we just went through and one by one, we just eliminated, you know what, could we take this one out and still feel good about the selection? And that's how we did it. We just kept working on it till we got down to, we thought we had 150. Okay, we don't count so well. We had 159, but it all worked out. Yeah. Yeah, thank you. So I saw some other hands. Who had their hand
Yeah,
up?
it was.
Yasmin, yes.
So I just want to point out that I really like the associated emotions part of it,
Ah,
because it just helps me to kind of differentiate between similar emotions. So while I went through this list, I actually didn't go it alphabetically. So, I was doing acceptance, and then I jumped on to resignation, and then I jumped on to
yeah,
hopelessness.
yeah,
So
lovely.
so I am just doing it this way, which I am actually enjoying, reading them like that, all the associated
Good.
emotions
Yeah,
together
yeah,
and kind of
lovely.
group.
Lovely. Well, the whole intention of this wasn't that people read it in order. It's not the idea, but really use it as a reference. So yeah, lovely. Somebody else had their hand up. I saw another hand. No? Okay. So one thing I want to point out, so this is 10 years old. I've learned a few things in the last 10 years. And for instance, if you look at timid, you'll realize that actually that's what is that? An adjective. That's not a noun. And the name of the emotion would be timidity. Timidity. That's what should be in this square right here. And in the revised edition, it will be what's in this square right here. But I only learned that from our editor because I wrote to him one day and I said, Frank, I don't know what I'm looking for. When I'm trying to name an emotion, what form of the word am I looking for? And he said, oh, well, that's pretty easy. You're looking for a noun because it's a person, place, or thing. I'm like, yeah, that's right. It's a person, place, or thing. Got it. And so then I started going through and adjusting. So it's quite interesting because we talk about being timid, but the emotion itself would be timidity. So if you look through the whole list, you'll find actually quite a few of those where the form of the word is not what I would use today. Another thing you'll find, and this will be changed in the revision, is that some of these turn out to be more not quite emotions rather than specific emotions or precise emotions. So one of the things to know about this is all just made up. I mean, this isn't the truth. Lucy and I made this up and we went through it and we revised it and we, did the best we could at the time with it. And yet it's always evolving. There's always something new. There's always a nuance. There's always a discovery. Occasionally there's typos. But the whole idea of this, and here's what I would invite you, is you can use this. But what I would suggest is maybe even more valuable is to create your own. So, if you know how to use Excel, that's great. That's easy. But it's a wonderful, wonderful exercise to pick an emotion, go find the etymology, and then figure out for yourself how would you articulate the story, impulse, and purpose, and what emotions do you think are associated with that emotion, related to it, similar to it, confused with it, or maybe opposites of it. Because when you do it, then it really gets embodied. And that's been a huge help for me. Because once I did this, then I had to learn it because I was doing it. So again, I think using it as a reference, like you're doing, Yasmin, is fabulous. And I think, great, do it. All you want to do it, do it. The other thing I'd say in your copy is if you don't agree with one of these, cross it out and put in your interpretation. That's fine, right? It's your book. You can write in it. I know we were taught in school we can't do that, but you can do that. So I would just say, make it yours, own it, because you're the one who has to understand emotions in the way you understand them. And there is no absolute. I know I've said this 100 times, but there's no absolute. We can gather information about them, data, indicators, ideas, but in the end, there are interpretation of some experience that we're having, and all we're trying to do is articulate them the best way we know how. Yeah. Okay, so here's the etymological root. Here's why I find this so interesting. An etymological root is the most basic, unanalyzable form of a word, right? Meaning we can't reduce it anymore. And it's the original building block that then you add on to. So when you say thanks, thankful, thankfulness, you're building a word, but the core is thanks, right? You can't reduce it any more than that. So roots hold a fundamental meaning and cannot be broken down any further into smaller, meaningful parts. Aha, great. And even if you take uncertain, oh, okay, but really that's not the root, right? Certain is the root. On, we just added on to make it mean something different. But here's the part I love. Understanding these building blocks reveals how interconnected language is. You can explore a word's linguistic roots, earliest known use, historical evolution, and changes in form. For me, totally fascinating. Right here, my preferred website to go to is this one, Etymology, Etym Online. I think it's absolutely brilliant how the author has created it. I wrote to him and I said, I can't thank you enough for the work you've done. It's so good. So I would, I would make it, I would bookmark it, right? I'd say, yep, I, I use it all the time. Yep.
There's
So there's
also an
one other
app,
thing.
Dan.
Sorry.
There's also an app that I have on my phone for it.
Oh, okay.
Yep,
And
it's right next to yours,
okay,
Emori.
and you can have it on your phone too. Yeah,
It's
perfect.
pretty cool.
Lovely. Yeah. Oh, I don't, maybe, well, I'll check. But here's another thing that I discovered that I think is really quite interesting. So terror, so it comes from Latin. Okay, right. Okay. We can get that. But then if you look at whoops, then if you look at thankfulness, you go Old English. Huh, interesting. So what it looks like to me, and I don't have verified data on this, but in all of my work, I would say that English words for emotions, something like 75% of them come from Latin. A huge percentage, a huge majority. And then there's a few from Greek, enthusiasm, Greek, panic, Greek, right? There's a few from Greek. And then there's a whole bunch too from Old English, Germanic roots, Anglo-Saxon, a few from Welsh, etc. So it's fascinating too where they come from. And this is one of the reasons why we have two emotions or words for emotions in English that are so similar. If you think about timidity and shyness, pretty similar. Why do we have both? Because timidity came from Latin. Shyness came from Old English. Oh, well, that's interesting. So both cultures were trying to say something kind of similar, but of course they had their own way of saying it. Confidence and trust, exactly the same situation. Confiance is Latin, trust is Old English. And you can find actually quite a lot of these. So I find that helpful too, because then I go, oh, okay, I get it. They're going to be really similar. So how am I going to distinguish them? What's the difference for me? And if I can't find it in the root, then I start thinking about, okay, how is my story different in these two emotions? How's my impulse or my predisposition different? And what's different about the purpose of it? Is there a difference? And what is it? Can I articulate what the difference is? So again, a whole world in the etymology of these. So here's some of my favorites. I just went through and picked out. What do I like? Well, panic from Greek. I love this because Pan was the god, the Greek god, who, remember, played the flute, went through the forest, and the animals and the people lost their minds. And I think that's exactly what happens in panic. People lose their minds, right? They, I was watching, oh, we went to see Michael Jackson, the movie last week, and the people in the crowd, like, they lose their minds, right? It's just so fascinating. Now, maybe that's not panic because there's no fear there, but you think about it in a crowd, you think about when things start going badly, whoa, panic pretty quick. I thought, well, that's fascinating. Like, okay, Greeks had a god. Hey, let's name this emotion after that god because that makes sense to us. Prudence from Latin. I love this one. To foresee, foresight, sagacity, practical judgment. Oh, that's a helpful way to think about prudence for me. So we got Greek, we got Latin, another Greek, skeptics. I love skepticism. And who were the skeptics? They were a group and they were followers of a certain philosopher, right? Which, and really, skepticism originally meant to be inquiring or reflective, not in the way we use it. So then when I think about skepticism, I think about it completely differently. I go, oh, that's not a bad thing. It's just a different way of being reflective or inquiring than, let's say, curiosity. Oh, interesting. It kind of restores skepticism as a really useful emotion. Scorn, love this one. And I love that it's from vulgar Latin. I'm sure you all knew that because, yeah, well, because you know these things. But it meant to break off someone's horns. Scorn, right? You break off their cornu, which is also in Spanish. And again, so you break off whatever is important to them, the threat, the oof, that makes scorn pretty brutal when you think about it that way. And kindness, I love kindness, Old English, right? And it meant originally the origin was with the feeling that we would have for a relative, right? To care for. So for me, these are fascinating. And some of them are kind of boring, but a lot of them very, very interesting. So here is what I want to ask you. So you read this book. Some of you have read it multiple times. We've had our conversations. I'm just curious. So how has this changed the way you understand or regard emotions? Might be your emotions, might be other people's emotions, but I'm just really curious. So you came into this, whether you read it the first time this time or you've read it before, but what's given you? What's changed for you in the way that you relate to emotions, the way you think about emotions, the way you leverage emotions? Jolene.
I read this book back 2021 when we took the first emotion-centered coaching course, and I was more reflective this time in reading it. But what I noted was I can now articulate almost exactly what emotion I'm experiencing because I understand conditions and clusters. And that's something I had no knowledge of before. So now I can, and I've memorized the entire Emoli deck and now the Amore deck. And so it's really fun to test yourself to see if you know the story of
Mm.
each of these emotions. But then when the emotion happens, it's the articulation that's really clear. So thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you. That's wonderful to hear. Well, that's really the basis of the cards is that they're like flashcards. So that was part of the idea is just like you memorize the multiplication table, is some of this work you just got to memorize, and some of it, right? You can investigate and create and write and invent. So, Alyssa,
I think it's just kind of deepened my understanding of, to piggyback on Jolene a little bit, the conditions that prompt emotion. So one of the conditions that I've done a lot of thinking about over the span of our book club is rejection, and how, and that's led me down a path of how obviously emotions underlie these conditions, but then also how at varying times and for varying people, the emotions can be different. And so, even I'm not sure how it is in other cultures, but like in Western culture, at least, we have this condition, and usually coming from our friends in the therapy world, we're taught that this condition automatically means these emotional experiences, right?
yeah,
And I think that that's maybe doing us a disservice because what we really would benefit from is when we have those conditions thinking about, okay, what are the underlying cluster or two emotions, one emotion even that's underlying this experience for me now, or, or maybe I've experienced in the past.
yeah,
And then a final thing is how certain conditions get triggered by emotions in the past, which and then in turn is like an underlying points to an underlying emotion, and just how valuable that is in trying to process through and move forward.
yeah, lovely. Well, I think you were the wise person who said, if you can't name it, you can't process it, you can't navigate it. And I would completely agree with that because what was rejected, is that the word you used at the beginning? Yeah, because when I think about that, if I think about the emotions that would produce that experience for someone, and not just for me, if I just try to imagine what emotion might somebody feel that they would say, I feel rejected. Well, I can disappointment. Sure. Okay. I thought that that person was going to be my friend and they're not. So I'm disappointed. But you know what? There's emotions that I think, well, this is an emotion that maybe we don't think about, like yearning. I yearn for something. I can't have it. And so I feel a sense of rejection from that possibility, let's say. So I think when we start leveraging them in this way and we don't assume that we know the answer, interesting things happen. We start to see things around the edges. We start to see things that maybe we didn't see before. And I think, well, no, I believe completely what you said, that we do ourselves a disservice. Because what we've said is, oh, well, if I have fear, the antidote is courage. Really? That is so simplistic. No, I feel fear. But is it, first of all, is it fear? I don't know. Might be apprehension, might be dread, might be something else. But the second is really the only way I can move out of fear is by leveraging courage. I don't think so. I can move out of fear by leveraging adventurousness. I can move by faith. There's so many possibilities. So I agree. And I think the more colors on the palette, the more options we have. And if we're clear about the colors on the palette and we see how they're related, oh my gosh, we have so much to work with. So I'm 100% in agreement with you. Thank you. Brenda.
Just adding on to that, beautiful description from Melissa. um, I think this exploring this book also gives us permission to sort of be with emotions, whether they feel difficult or not difficult. And with sort of like permission to not rush to solve them or to do something about it. Like, so if just the act of naming something, and you might not be ready to deal with it yet, and that's okay, but just identifying it
Yeah.
and it's been really interesting because especially in Western culture, we are talking about culture. It's like there's this rush to solve,
Yeah.
rush to fix, a rush to make better, and it's like doesn't need to be do any of those things. Like no, we can just be with it, and like it's easier said than done.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And I love that. And I think that's actually where we come to understand our emotions when we slow down. And I don't know if it's in the book or not, but I always think about people say, "Oh, I need to figure that out." And I always think figuring it out is something we do intellectually, right? I'm going to put all the pieces together. I'm going to see the logic. I'm going to figure it out. So we kind of attack the problem to figure it out. But we also talk about coming to an understanding. And I always think emotions are about that. We sit back and we go, oh my gosh, look, there's the emotion feeling. And we sit with it. And then after a while, and maybe it's 5 minutes, and maybe it's an hour, and maybe it's 3 days, we go, oh, you know what? I know what emotion it is. And now I'm pretty clear that I understand why it showed up, why it's there. Why was it that specific emotion? So for me, these are two ways, and that we could, I'm sure there are different ways to articulate them, but the way we come to an understanding emotionally, I think, is different than the way we come to an understanding intellectually. But I don't think we give ourselves the space and the time because we got to figure it out. But I think there's as much value in coming to an understanding as there is to figuring it out. So for me, I love that. And I know you've been in the coaching and other people have been in the coaching program. That's what I find really useful in the coaching. Let me bring emotions into it. Because if I'm trying to figure out what's going on with my coachee, I'll probably come to one answer and it may be a problem solving answer. But if I allow myself to listen and then come to an understanding of, oh, I think I see, what the influences are here. I think I see what's moving them. I think that word has me thinking maybe this is the emotion that's a barrier for them. So I think I understand my coachees completely differently when I approach it that way than when I approach it as trying to figure it out. But we're not taught to do that. We're taught to figure it out, right? I think about school. How many times were you told, well, just figure it out? Like, okay.
It's
How are you going
reinforced
to do that? Well, the only tool you got is in school.
reinforced our
Yeah.
core
Is
teachers that
yeah.
I coach. They're literally rewarded for the faster they figure things out and the faster
Yeah.
they solve problems. Like they're
Yeah.
hired to solve problems.
Yeah.
And so it's like antithetical in practice at
Yeah.
first,
Yeah.
and so learn to
Yeah.
do something a little different.
Yeah. Yeah. I agree with you. And I think a lot of people I've worked with, one of the hardest parts is pausing to notice their emotions, slowing down, taking a breath, just being curious, like, wow, what is that emotion and why is it showing up right now? And not being in any hurry to figure it out. And I don't think that's always the answer, but I think certainly can be the answer sometimes. Yeah, thank you. Marie,
I can't find my hand raising button, so I
oh, that's okay.
apologize.
You have a 3D hand. We'll accept
Yeah.
that today. So
Um, what you just raised, Brenda, I realize that I think that is the most profound effect for me on this reading of the book, and this is like the third time, but really the more contemplative reading. And I think that is what I take away is this greater sense of contemplation and noticing, particularly in the discussion of sectors, how emotions show up in politics or government or policing or the arts or um, I just find myself not only in my own reference, but noticing around me what's going on and thinking about it, noticing moods and recognizing, like I'm an eavesdropper. If I hear somebody on the phone behind the desk talking, I can't help myself. I'm listening and I'm thinking, oh, I wonder what's going on the other end. And God, she sounds, this sounds serious or whatever. But that's the big effect for me, I think, is
Yeah,
just this overall noticing without needing to intervene, without
yeah,
needing to act or fix or respond,
yeah,
um, which I did not have before.
yeah. Lovely.
I was going too fast. I was
Yeah,
going too fast.
lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So any other, yeah, Marcia.
I'll just share. I feel like the infant in this journey compared to most on this call. It feels like it's a little bit it's very exciting and I really appreciated. I listened to the video from last week about self-compassion to be patient with myself,
Yeah.
because there's so much here and it's so rich. But what I've really come to differentiate in my practice is to remember it and live it, but just differentiate between conditions and moods and clusters. And I was a person that always used the word feeling.
Hmm.
I feel X to express an emotion and just kind of understanding the difference there. And so I guess am I correct? Is that my emotional literacy is improving?
Vastly. You're so much more emotionally literate than you were just a month ago. So,
Yeah. So
well,
it's
you
I
know,
appreciate the journey.
yeah, well, that's great because it's a lifelong journey. And,
Mhm.
I've been on this journey a while and I learn something emotional every day. I, there's always something. Somebody has some new way of saying something, or I don't know, somebody suggests something, or I don't know, I see it somewhere, I read it somewhere, I go, oh, well, never made that connection. Never made that connection before. So I don't think it's something that you're ever, I guess I would relate it to, imagine you're a gardener and you go out in your garden and every day
Mhm.
it's a little bit different, right? One day there's ladybugs and then one day they're gone. And you're like, whoa, look at that. And, then there's the ones that you don't like so much, worms and aphids and those kind of things, but they're part of the garden. So I think that it's rich in that way. There's so many layers, there's so many possibilities, things grow, things change. And I think different emotions play a different role in our lives at different times, right? I
Mhm.
mean,
Mhm.
clearly they do. We change all the time in terms of what are the emotions I'm leveraging now in this era of my life versus what I was leveraging when I was 30 or when I was 19 and great. That's lovely. That's what they're there for. So let's use
And
them.
even as you're speaking, I'm kind of really connecting that it's not like you ever get there, so to speak. You
There,
know,
there is,
it's a living and breathing thing.
you are correct. There is no there. So you
Mhm.
are there. You are already
Right.
there. There's nowhere else to go. There's just look around, let it soak in, and you're already there. And I think that's wonderful to know that. Like, oh, I've arrived. I'm in the land of emotions, and they're all around me. And now I can just savor them when I want to, and when I don't want to, I just won't pay attention to them. Because
Mhm.
sometimes
Mhm.
that's right. Stepping away from them is not a bad thing, or shifting to an emotion that allows you to rest. That's a great thing to do. So
Mhm.
you're already there, Marcia. So
Thank you.
welcome.
Thank you to the room.
Sandy.
I was thinking about your question, and what just came to me is I bought your book in 2005. No, when was COVID? Yeah,
Uh,
2000.
COVID was 2020, wasn't it?
2020.
Sorry, I'm a
Yeah.
little tired
If you
today.
bought in
So
2005, that's cool because I hadn't even written it then. So we're talking time travel here.
yeah,
That's cool.
yeah, I was thinking the downshift in the real estate market. So I bought it, um, and I had just started my journey with learning about emotions, and the way to navigate them, literacy about them, um, how they follow you. And then I started writing my book. And without your book, I don't know if I would have been able to give the meaning behind all the wisdom of what I gathered in all of the journeys in my life.
Mhm.
And I would have to step back months at a time because the emotion which I thought I had unraveled, or the feeling I had unraveled, or the what I thought I had unpacked wasn't even near it. So when I sat with that emotion, um, or realize, wow, you really were emotionally stumped.
Yeah.
So yeah, like Melissa said, once you name it, the grand part of it is it loses power. And then the other for me is knowing the meaning gives me the opportunity to be present. Is this a decision I'm making based on the emotion? Is this a decision I'm making on my mood? So the book has just really been so helpful for me. And then I love a good Excel sheet. I love things from A to Z, right? Point and shoot. So yeah, that was wonderful. And then the stories, right? I love the stories. So the book was laid out very well, I think, in terms of capturing different people who like to read different ways.
Yeah. Super. Thank you. Well, in these last minutes, so I didn't keep track, but Jenny, Marcel, Larry, anything, and anybody else I missed? Anything you want to share?
One, the little react button at the bottom, Marie, is a little heart. So when you want to ask a question, just hit that little heart with your cursor, and it'll give you a whole bunch of things to do. You can give people smiley faces or tears or whatever, and maybe even the middle finger if you are so inclined.
Whoa.
But anyway,
Whoa.
so I was just thinking, it really helps me to have an in picture, a big picture of what do you have, like, let's say people get literate emotionally.
Mhm.
What does life look like for people uh, on the other side of getting educated and plugging into what's going on in their minds and hearts and being able to
Yeah.
communicate that and converse? What does that world look like? What does that relationship look like? What does that police force look like?
Yeah. Lovely. Are you asking the question, or that's
Yeah,
what the question it
yeah. I was just
provokes for
saying, could
you?
you like kind of paint a picture of what
Yeah,
you've seen on the other side of that life
sure.
and experience?
I'll say it in two ways. One way is I would say it's not so different for me than linguistic literacy. I mean, if you think about linguistic literacy, I can't watch a movie with subtitles if I can't read the subtitles. I mean, it enriches my life every day to read. You know, you go to a restaurant, they give you a menu. Okay. You don't even have to ask for it. It's just assumed. And everything you read from books and everything, text messages, and it expands your world phenomenally, but it also gives you a tool to learn more intellectually. That's where it operates. But emotions are the same thing. Emotions, you begin to see them everywhere. It colors your world. You recognize that, oh my gosh, I had an experience where I came up from the subway, first time ever as an adult in Times Square, New York. Oh my God, what emotions in me, but all around me. It was phenomenal. But it wasn't just noise. It's like, oh, wow, what is that? I feel something here that is an emotional energy. So I think it helps us understand other people better, not just their words, but what's their meaning, what's their intention, what are they trying to say. But it also helps us know people. Like we know, oh, you know what? Nobody said this about this person, but just the way I see them, generosity. That's what I see. So again, I think it adds dimension to everything, everything around us, all the people in our lives, ourselves. But the other way I'd answer this is, in my experience, when I have that, it brings so much peace and serenity. Because I know, I got an emotion. That emotion is not very comfortable. But you know what? I get to choose. I could shift that emotion, or I could just sit and listen to it because maybe it's trying to tell me something important. So they really become friends. We befriend them. They just become part of us, part of our lives. So I think the discomfort, the fear, the embarrassment, all of that disappears. Because why? Why would you need that if you're at peace? And the last part of that piece, I hear people talking about, oh, yeah, I'm always fighting my head and my heart, blah, 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 internal struggles. And I'm like, why? Why internal struggles? Listen to what your emotions say, listen to what you think, and then you get to decide what are you going to do with that. So for me, it brings an enormous amount of peace. And that's wonderful. Is that helpful? Yeah. All right. Jenny.
There's really little to add. Everything great has been said already, but one thing I'm left with is this. We say note, name, navigate, but I think we become navigators, and navigators are guides, and we become navigators in our own kind of world. But as you understand others more, you can help in that navigation, and navigation's always to do with a journey. Like there's something in there that's it's building for me. I think the biggest takeaway was the clusters and just how incredibly useful those are, both personally and all around me every day. So the title is brilliant. The Unopened
Well,
Gift. It's been opened. I'm
thank
excited.
you.
Thank you,
Well,
Dan.
thank you. And Marcel.
I think I'll go back and maybe take a cut at Larry and what he was asking out because I was going to answer it kind of through that lens. And that was for me, this time around, I think fully participating in taking responsibility for my emotions. And what we said at the very beginning, I think on the very first class, we said it's going to be empowering. And when you're a people pleaser, you don't really feel a lot of empowerment. You feel a lot of the opposite. So the unworthiness of it. So I think when somebody is able to, for me, to get better with my emotional literacy, I don't have to, I no longer have to justify my uniqueness. I feel like I belong. I am worthy. I don't have to justify it. I can forgive myself. And I can also, too, while I'm forgiving, I can elevate others. I think about that too. So that's one thing, they are my emotions, and they're called my emotions. And we talked about my debt, my family, my savings, my health. Only I can regulate me. So that's one thing that I get from a marriage, more empowering in the marriage to pull together, empowering with my family, my brothers and sisters. So that's really been helpful for me. And then I think the other thing too, I didn't know any of that. To know it is one thing, but to do the work, to start chiseling away, saying, I'm going to have to do some things differently. Like, Marcel, you could talk. Maybe you don't. So these were all things that I've been able to fully realize as we go on this. And again, I love it because I get to learn each and every day. And out in the field, we kind of have to be a little bit of that practitioner role model. So it's hard to be convincing when you yourself are not convinced. Showing up here allows me to become more convinced.
Yeah.
And so when you hear people say, hey, politics, big part. And so Dan said, when you try to change the narrative is the emotion. And I'm like, holy smokes, that's so true. So it may be kind of brief, but it's very, very helpful. So that's the way I'd kind of say, hey, here's how
Love
it's
it.
impacted me. Yeah.
Thank you. Yasmin, Brenda, and then I have three bullet points I want to share before we go. Yasmin.
Yeah, just to thank you, Dan. I mean, it has opened up a new world to me that I ever thought existed. So, a different way to look at my own self and others also. So, just thank you so much. And I'm going to read this book again, more intellectually. And, I'll continue to prepare my Excel sheet that I'm preparing, but sincerely from bottom of my heart. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, Yasmin. Brenda.
Yeah, just adding on to Larry's question. I'm not sure what world that you're coming from, like what type of career and that type of thing, but just from a super practical perspective, I work with leaders and it's helped them be able to respond versus react. Because we
Yeah.
can easily get hijacked by our emotions and we just do things unconsciously and we do them over and over and over again, like what, so just being able to plan, kind of understanding like what triggers me, how do I typically act, what emotions are driving that, and then be able, like my mom, for example, I adore her and she triggers me with her anxiety, and I've been able to just be able to plan for that and think about like, okay, well, what else? How am I feeling about that? And what can I do differently maybe? So I don't know. I don't know if that's helpful.
Lovely. Thank you, Brenda. Okay, so here's the final share from my side. The final share is this. So I got three final thoughts to leave with you. The first one is you're always in the laboratory. You don't have to go looking for emotions. They're in you, they're around you. Anytime you want to practice, they're there. Even when you're dreaming, even at night, you wake up, you've had emotions. So, or if you can't go to sleep, that's another time. Sometimes I feel certain emotions, but you're always in the laboratory. You always have this possibility of understanding better what's happening through the lens of emotions. Number two, if you want to learn about emotions, the best recommendation I can make is stay in the conversation. And that means, yes, yeah, I mean, read the book again, but it also means write to me, have a conversation with me. It also means talk to each other. It also means talk to other people. It just means make it front and center in your life. Just have it be something you focus on. Just like if you wanted to learn to cook, what would you do? You'd watch cooking shows, you'd practice, you'd go in the kitchen, you'd experiment, and you'd go out to eat at great restaurants to get ideas, right? You'd stay in the conversation of food and cooking. So stay in the conversation. That's the best recommendation I can make in your own way, because there is no right way. Your way is the best way. And the third is this, teach what you've learned. There is nothing that will help you land this stuff like if you got to explain it to somebody, if you have to articulate it, if you have to make sense of it for yourself so you can help make sense of it for other people. And we always say this, right? First you do, do, learn, do, teach, whatever. There's some expression which I don't remember, but I know teach is at the end. And I'll tell you that, so I do this group, this emotional mastery group, every 3 weeks. We take one emotion, we delve into it, and I have four groups. So we do the same conversation for four different groups. Every time I pick an emotion, I learn so much doing that. Even though people in the groups, like Marie, are thinking, oh, look, Dan's teaching us. And I'm like, yeah, uh-huh. But really, what's going on is Dan's here to learn because every time I always learn. And just the preparation is so helpful. I have to think about it. I have to look into it. I have to look up etymologies. I got to make sense of it. And then I got to learn, and then I got to figure out how to articulate it for people so it makes sense to them. It's great. So I would say the preparation for teaching and teaching, one of the very best things you can do if you want to learn more emotionally. Yeah. So that's where I'd leave it, except Marcel, we got 3 minutes. Anything you want to say about the upcoming book, Dignity and Leadership? What would you say to these fine people to inspire them to come next week?
They're already on the journey. We're just going to go maybe a different way together. So dignity and leadership, when I work with leaders, you'll say, hey, it's less about who you are, and it's more about who you are with dignity and extending that dignity while we're leading. I think another thing that we're thinking about is the human challenges of leadership. How do we navigate those individually, collectively? Um, how do we lead with dignity rather than ego? Yeah, so my way or the highway. I think about the idea to get some practice behind this, some awareness behind this, some insight, and then have some impact on self and then impact on others. And then I think the other thing too that we want to be thinking about is that it's a human endeavor. And so when we say the word leadership, we're talking about decision making, problem solving, and relationship building. And we do it in life, we do that in our family, and we do that at work. We retire from work. We don't retire from life. We don't retire from family. So that's what the journey is about. Each week, we're going to take a very specific chapter, all the chapters, and I think we're going to break it up, Dan, 16 weeks, so 4 months. Is that
Yep, it's a long haul, but they'll be recorded. They'll be available, but
gas prices are going down, so we
we'd
can all
love,
make the long haul trip,
we'd
fuel up,
love,
fuel up. Yep, yep, yep.
yeah,
So that's kind of the journey. And so come along with us. And we'd love to do a little bit of informing, a little bit of involving, and then a lot of inspiring. So you can go and take exactly what we talked about and put it into practical application individually, and then maybe help, people around you collectively to maybe stay on the journey with us. So yeah, Dan, we'll
all right.
see you next week.
Delight and gratitude. So thank you so much for being here and participating, being part of this. It means a lot to me, and it's great to get to revisit something I did a long time ago, and it still seems fairly current. So I'm happy about that. Thank you all. You have a wonderful week until I see you again. And any questions, you let me know.
Thank you,
Thank
Dan.
you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.